At this time, I'd like to call the Intermodal Committee meeting to order, and I will go forward with our freight rail update. And we have our Assistant Director here is Joanna Campbell.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, Commissioner, members of the board. I am Joanna Campbell. I'm here to present you with the 2022 Freight Rail Update. I wanted to start at the highest level. And where's my slide? There we go. I want to start at the highest level, and I want to talk to you about the Georgia State Rail System. That is the entirety of all rail in the state of Georgia. We've got 2 Class 1 railroads. Those are Norfolk Southern and CSX. Those are the major long-haul interstate railroads. We have 26 short-line railroads. These are the feeders that take materials and loads from the industrial locations where they are manufactured, where they are grown, where they are developed, and they feed them into the Class 1 railroads. We have 2 inland ports, we have 2 Amtrak lines, and we have 5 tourist trains. Those are all little passenger rail historic railroads. So, a little bit more about freight rail in Georgia. 171 million tons of freight were carried through the state of Georgia in 2017. Those are the most recent numbers that we have. And over 50% of that freight is interstate, so it goes all the way through Georgia, but 44% is intrastate, so is moving within the state. The Surface Transportation Board projects that rail freight will increase in Georgia by 2% per year. So that's a really substantial increase every year when you look at that 171 million tons. And here we've got some numbers just indicating how many tons of different commodities travel through the state of Georgia on these different lines. Now, the Georgia DOT owns 6 short line railroads, and they service these small businesses. It provides value to the local economies. What short lines do that the Class 1s do not do is that they provide individualized, customized service to their customers along those lines. There's an estimate out there that short line is a 25% cost savings over the railroads, over the Class 1s for those short lines. And these are smaller railroads that exist for the purpose of either interchanging with the Class 1s. They link industries together, 2 industries that have cooperative needs or common needs. For example, timber company and a flooring company. So timber products, those would be linked together on a short line railroad. And then there are some passenger lines, and we do have 5 of those. In Georgia, Georgia DOT owns 6 short line railroads. They are in rural areas of the state, and they are able to pass on those lower cost structures and the customized service that they can provide to the rural customers. They can be more receptive and they can be more sensitive to the needs of their customers, which really helps these small businesses in the rural areas grow and develop their businesses so that they have the ability to really get service that is made for them. So, again, GDOT owns 6 short line railroads. It's a total of 535 miles of rail. In 2021, no, I'm ahead of myself, I'm sorry. So let's talk about each of those short lines. We're going to go through each one of them. First of all, we have the Georgia Southwest Railroad. It runs from Bainbridge to Cuthbert and to Columbus to Cusseto. The main businesses that it supports are agribusiness and construction products. It is 102 miles long, and in 2021, they carried 2,850 carloads. That line supports 635 local jobs. Just a quick spotlight on two of the businesses that are serviced by that line: Birdsong Peanuts and Oxford Construction, that I think a lot of you have heard of. We do a lot of business with them here in Georgia. Next, we have the CCKY Railroad. That line is 49 miles long and supports 4,200 jobs. It is located in northwest Georgia, and it supports the textile, flooring, and manufacturing industries. A couple of the businesses along the CCKY are Shaw Industries in Lafayette and Chickamauga, flooring manufacturers with 1,000 jobs, and Roper Corporation in Lafayette with 1,800 jobs. Next is the Heart of Georgia Railroad. It kind of cuts across the center of the state. It is our longest line. It is almost 250 miles long, and it supports 915 jobs. It has an interchange with the CSX and the Norfolk Southern lines in Cordele and Midville, and it interchanges with the Georgia Central line in Vidalia, which gives it access to the ports. On the HOG, a couple of the businesses, we have Interfor, which is a lumber company. It's nice to be able to tell you that their shipping was up 3.5% year over year from 20 to 21. And Norboard, which is the largest customer along the line, and they produce OSB, Oriented Strand Board, and they are located in Cordele. And their shipping was up 17% in 2021 year over year. Then we have the Georgia Northeastern Railroad. That is up in North Georgia. It runs a excursion line. I think many of you have heard of the Blue Ridge Scenic Railroad. It is 25 miles long, and it has 37 direct employees. It has a lot of economic development effect up there, but we do not have those numbers right at hand. And just to spotlight that railroad a little bit, their ridership increased 60% from 2017 to 2021. So that tells you what a significant business and what a significant opportunity that is for the state. 2021, they had a record number of riders at 108,000. They are also partnering with a company called Freedom Rail Bikes to give people an opportunity to ride bicycles on some unused track. So I think that that'll be a really fun and exciting outing for people to do. It'll bring some new tourists up into that area. Next, we have CaterParrot RailNet. That is 43 miles long, supports 550 jobs. And some of their businesses that they support are Longboard in Willacoochee and WinFab in Nashville. This is really a good example of small businesses having their service customized to these specific businesses so that they can meet the needs of these businesses. Also wanted to show you on the CaterParrot line, they've also started a new excursion line called the Azalea Sprinter, and it runs from Willacoochee to Valdosta, and it runs primarily on the weekends, has stops in Willacoochee, Nashville, Ray City, and Valdosta. It allows people to take that trip to get off and shop and eat and support the local businesses in those small towns. Economic Development estimated that in 2021, that Azalea Sprinter line brought over $1 million in economic development and is expecting that to go up to over $1.3 million for 22. So that is growing steadily. And again, another wonderful opportunity in the state of Georgia. Finally, the last of our railroads is the Ogeechee. It is 22 miles long, and it runs from Ardmore to Sylvania. Supports 25 jobs, three extremely rural businesses that are getting rail service and getting their products into the Class 1 railroads and getting their needs met, which a Class 1 would not be able to do. If you look at this slide, it says that some of these businesses only have 5 carloads a month. They are able to get good service based on that. The primary industry serviced by the Ogeechee are agricultural and paper products. And 2 of the businesses along there, Bodiford Farms in the agricultural lime business, and AggroStar Sylvania, which provides grain and feed products. So I want to talk just for a minute about the projects that GDOT is doing on those different lines. We are making a concerted effort to upgrade all of those lines to a Class 2 track and ties and a system that will allow the trains to carry 286,000-pound loads, 25 miles per hour. That is the standard in the railroad industry, and we are working hard to get it up there. That'll create a lot of efficiencies of scale, a lot of efficiencies of scope, allow a lot more industry and a lot more businesses to take advantage of this rail access. In the last 4 years, we've done 250 miles of track improvements. We have done upgrades, some urgent upgrades to 37 bridges that were in disrepair and not able to take those 287,000-pound loads. And once we get done with the current round of projects that we're working on, our entire system will be about 70% 286 compliant.
You right. I'm good.
Okay.
What you need, huh?
Nothing. I don't need anything. I'm going to put your phone on speaker.
Oh, no, I'm all right.
So finally, I want to take a look at the funding that we have put in, that the state's put into these lines over the last several years. We've been able to use a combination of state and federal funds starting in 2017 to do these upgrades. You can see each of these numbers for a total of over $90 million in upgrades that we've been able to take advantage of. Some of these projects are still in construction. There are several of them that are just getting started. But we were able to leverage this state money to get federal funds at a 50-50 match and do significant additional work. We're happy about that. This year, we applied for 3 CRISI grants in November of 2021. It was announced in June that we had been awarded 2 of them. So those projects are getting underway. One's on the Heart of Georgia Railroad, and one of them is on the Georgia Southwest Railroad. There's an additional CRISI grant given to the Heart of Georgia Railroad that we are still working on scoping out, and that will be at a 20% match. So they'll be able to do some work, we believe, in Americus for that project. And just to give you a quick highlight so that this is not just dollars and cents, just a couple of pictures of some of the things that we've already completed. Some work on the Heart of Georgia between Preston and Vidalia, some track and tie work, and a little bit of bridge work. In Somerville, the CCKY Railroad, again, some track and some tie work, and one of the interchanges that needed some repair. And that's it, and I thank you. Anyone have any questions?
Any questions? I want to say thank you because there's a lot of work in there, and I have used this map several times to locate these railroads, and they're particularly of interest, I think, to every one of us throughout Georgia. So thank you for this update in regards to our freight rails. Also, the update in regards to what we are doing in upgrading each of the rails. So thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Yes.
How does GDOT make a determination as to own a railroad as opposed to all these other privatized short lines?
Our 6 railroads, Our 6 railroads were acquired in the late 1990s, and they were lines that were underperforming or in severe disrepair, that the corridors were very valuable. And so there was a lot of value in the state acquiring them rather than allowing them to be discontinued as rail corridors.
And how do we evaluate that they continue to make sense economically? I mean, there's a $100 million investment in them now. Is there a return on that investment through economic development? And
the Department of Economic Development has a whole database of rail-ready sites. And so quite a few of those sites are located along our lines. And we also have a formula tool that helps us determine which lines need improvements and where those improvements are made.
So is there some scenario where at some point we say such and such short line just doesn't make sense economically anymore and it's time to stop operating it?
We have all of our short lines under lease, so there are private operators that are running them for us, and they are paying us a rent payment every year.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Any other comments? Then our committee stands adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, we won't waste any more time. We will call the Program Delivery Committee to order. Christopher Rudd, so he's making his way up here. He's the State Design Policy Engineer to give us an update on the complete streets. Christopher, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Commissioner. It's my pleasure today to give you an update on the policy of complete streets in the department. You may remember from last month on the Committee of the Whole presentation given by Andrew Heath concerning safety update and how it relates to the bipartisan infrastructure law. In it, he showed a series of statistics and charts which explain the current state of fatalities on roadways here in Georgia. In particular, he highlighted safety data as it relates to a group of users called vulnerable road users. Now, the reason he did that is because in the law, in the bipartisan infrastructure law, it pays special emphasis on these vulnerable road users. And it does that primarily in three key ways. First, it requires certain safety analysis be performed and reported by each state, and it authorizes special research in the area of vulnerable road users. The law also establishes special safety programs like Safe Route to School, which you may have heard of, or Safe Streets and Roads for All. Now, these are programs that are either established for the first time in this law or maybe even reestablished. And third, this law attaches requirements on how states allocate percentages of funding based on how well they're doing with their crash rates for these vulnerable road users. So there's a lot of focus in the bipartisan infrastructure law on these vulnerable road users. So it may be beneficial to take just a minute to explain what these are. Technically, the law describes them as non-motorists, explicitly lists them out as pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorcyclists. Now, these are users that are more at risk for a severe outcome should they be involved in some crash of some sort. So it makes sense that the law pays special attention to them. The question, the goal, or one goal at least, that the law puts forward is, how do we design and produce a roadway system that accommodates these vulnerable users in a more all-encompassing way? So one tool to do that is complete streets. Now, it's identified in the bipartisan infrastructure law as a set of standards or policies that ensure the safe and adequate accommodation of these users that the law previously described as these vulnerable road users. It also includes another additional mode of travel, public transportation users. We're going to call those transit users in the future. Well, what is complete streets? So there's a national coalition for complete streets, and they put it simply by saying complete streets are streets for everyone. They go on to say that whatever you do in your roadway system, if it's planning or design, construction, operation, maintenance, anything and everything that you do with your road, you need to be thinking about and ensuring safe access for all people that need to use that facility. So these bicyclists, these pedestrians, these transit users, and at the same time, not forgetting those motorists that we always think of, right, when we think about our roadway system. So GDOT has essentially adopted this concept of complete streets into its own standards and policies. And to flesh that out a little bit more, let me illustrate what GDOT views as successful implementation of Complete Streets. In our view, Complete Streets is a policy commitment adopted by city, county, or state level for implementation. It's a way to plan, design, construct, operate, maintain safe access for all users of a roadway. And one thing that may not be completely obvious is that Complete Streets implementation may vary based on context. So what works well in a downtown urban center for one user may not work well for that same user on a rural roadway. Conversely, in our view, Complete Streets is not just a special street project, right? Programming a single special project to incorporate a few users that we've talked about, that doesn't substitute for a Complete Streets program or policy. At the same time, Complete Streets is not a mandate to immediately go and retrofit the entire roadway system to accommodate these users either. It's going to take some time for Complete Streets to work through our roadway system organically. And lastly, Complete Streets is not a silver bullet as we see it that promises to override other practical issues in road design. Very often, there's other constraints like right-of-way or environmental utilities that may pop up, make Complete Streets a little less feasible on a particular project. We still have to work through those other issues in order to implement Complete Streets on project. Well, what does Complete Streets look like in Georgia? I'll give you a few statistics here for our state. I mentioned that Complete Streets are adopted on different levels of municipalities. To date, we count in Georgia 29 different policies on the city, county, and state level that have been adopted. Several of those, as you would expect, are located in our more urban areas, right? As a matter of fact, of the policies that are in the state, about half of them have been adopted by a municipality in the metro Atlanta area. And specifically here at GDOT, we've had our Complete Streets policy in place now for 10 years. Of course, we didn't just adopt Complete Streets overnight, right? There were several steps that led us to the policy that we currently have today. So starting over 30 years ago, the department began to see that there was a need to accommodate more types of users on its roadways. And it responded by creating the Transportation Enhancement Program, which allows for sidewalks and other features to be added to the existing roadways. Later, in 1996, the department issued a policy that required that sidewalks be considered on any project that was designed. A few years later, in 2000, the department released a series of construction details, which drew out or depicted typical accommodations for bicyclists and pedestrians for our designers to use on their projects. In 2005, the department reworked its standard shoulder width requirements on rural areas, which allow for bikes to be accommodated on these facilities. At the same time, the department introduced a skip rumble strip pattern, which allows for the same kind of lane departure warning system for our motorists, but also allows for bikes to maneuver around these rumble strips. In 2006, the department published the design policy manual for the first time, and now this is where our Complete Streets policy would later take up residence. Then in the early part of the last decade, 2010, we have the first written policy in GDOT on Complete Streets take effect. About the same time, on a federal level, the Safe Routes to School program was adopted. Then all of that led to, in 2012, the adoption of the GDOT board of our Complete Streets program. So you fast forward another 10 years to 2021, and that's where we see the hallmarks of our policy being explicitly called out in the bipartisan infrastructure law. GDOT's policy has been a staple of our design for 10 years now, and because of this, we feel like we're very well positioned to tackle the requirements of the bipartisan infrastructure law in regards to Complete Streets. So what is our policy exactly? Our policy starts with some basic guidelines and principles that focus the actual nuts and bolts that we're going to give direction to our designers. Our policy defines the users that our system should accommodate in certain situations. It establishes networks along the roadway system where we plan to encourage certain user types to be. So think of bike paths and things like that as networks. And our policy establishes warrants or a checklist of sorts to direct our engineers on when specific accommodations should be made, even if your project may or may not be on one of those networked routes. All of this then leads us to a design that incorporates complete streets. Now, before I step through more specifics on the policy, I'd like to emphasize kind of the results of the implementation of this policy. You know, because we have this policy, it means that the needs of people walking, biking, using transit are always considered when we're in the early stages of project development. It doesn't mean that every project will always have these features in the final design, right? Also, our complete streets policy, it's not a planning tool. So projects are not programmed or initiated through complete streets, right? Some other mechanism gets this project going, but then once that happens, our complete streets policy will require that our designers walk through the warrant list and ask themselves, you know, if accommodations are right for their project. So I mentioned that the basis of complete streets policy here in GDOT is a series of it's based on a series of guiding principles. I'll walk through those now. This is kind of a lengthy list, so I apologize for that. But our policy starts out targeting specific categories of projects. Now, we know that there are certain types of projects where these features should always be considered. And if the project is a new construction project or if it's a reconstruction project, our complete streets policy will require the designer consider that these accommodations be included if they're warranted. Our policy intends to fit the context of the facility. We want our policy to not ignore the context or the area or the type of facility that's there. We don't want a blanket policy that says make some sort of requirement, even though we know that likely that facility wouldn't be used. So our policy takes context into account. Our policy requires that likely demand for bike or ped be taken into account. So we know that our projects are going to be out there after they're built for quite some time. That means that we're asking our designers to pull out our crystal ball, so to speak, right? And say, even though the demand may or may not be there today, is it likely to be there in the future? And if so, then it meets a warrant for inclusion in your project today. Our policy requires that designers anticipate likely paths of travel, right? So, for instance, a question that we might ask is, you know, are pedestrians likely to need to cross the road in a particular place? Well, if so, then it's not sufficient just to put an accommodation alongside the corridor if pedestrians eventually will need to cross over that roadway. So our policy requires that they accommodate that crossing movement if it's necessary as well. Our policy intends to not preclude future improvements. So it's possible that the demand is not there today, and we don't really anticipate the demand to be there in the future. Still, we ask our designers, as you're doing your project and making your improvements, is it possible to do those improvements such that if the demand ever does surface, you're able to make those accommodations? And finally, our policy asks that for all types of projects, whatever they are, I've mentioned that we target certain ones specifically, but for every kind of project, if it's practical at all, can we go ahead and make those accommodations now? So how do we determine specific types of accommodations to include? As we move into the actual inclusion or design process on a project, it's helpful to think of these accommodations for each user type as kind of a puzzle piece that may or may not fit into your project. GDOT's developed a series of warrants for each user type, and if any of those warrants are met, then that puzzle piece should be made a part of your final project. In order to determine which of these puzzle pieces fit, we've we review a list of warrants, this checklist that I mentioned before for each user type. The warrants are a series of standards and guidelines, and I've shown here a kind of an abbreviated list to give you an idea of what kinds of things and considerations go into whether or not accommodations are included. So for pedestrians, if a project is within a certain distance of a school or a university, other kind of facility like a park or a hospital, then a warrant is met. If the project is within an urbanized area or is expected to be inside of an urbanized area, if the project has an occurrence of pedestrian crashes, or, and this one can be an important one, if there's some sort of engineering judgment or some sort of planning analysis or public involvement that identifies some need for accommodation. Now remember, the whole point of Complete Streets is to accommodate these users that we have typically not accommodated that are likely to need to use the facility. So local public involvement is a key to knowing who those users are likely to be. For bicyclists, we have a similar list if the project is on a designated bike route, and by designated here we mean a bike route that's been adopted on the local, regional, state, or federal level, then it meets the warrant. If there's an existing bikeway that links to your project on either end, then it meets a warrant. If there are bicycle generators or destinations along the project, so think parks and neighborhood, things like that, then it meets a warrant. Or if there are reported bicycle crashes along the route of a certain amount. And transit, I mentioned transit earlier. For transit, we make possibly two different types of accommodations. If the project is on a corridor that's served by a fixed route transit, then our policy requires that we accommodate that type of vehicle that may be on there. And if the project is within a certain distance of something like a park, a stop or a park and ride lot or something like that, then we accommodate transit users on the project. Now, Complete Streets is an important criteria for GDOT. We recognize that it can have a big impact on the safety of multiple users within a corridor. However, there are sometimes factors that make implementation more difficult on some projects. But because this is an important criteria, it can't be waived without some sort of in-depth engineering study performed by the design team and express written approval by our chief engineer. Now, I'll end with just a couple of real-world project examples of Complete Streets implementation here in Georgia. This is the interchange of 285 and State Route 400. Usually, when we think about these vulnerable road users that I've mentioned, the bikes and the peds, we don't think about sprawling interchanges, right? However, public involvement was one of the warrants that I mentioned that might be important. Now, during the project involvement phase on this project, it was shown that the need exists for pedestrian and bicycle accommodations through this interchange. Now, the result is a shared use path that snakes through the project to accommodate these types of users. Now, this project, as you know, has already been let, and some progress has already been made, but not specifically on the shared use path yet. Another example can be found in Moreland Avenue in downtown Atlanta. Now, obviously, this is a dense area that sees a lot of use, not just from motorists, but pedestrians and bicyclists as well. The original design of this project included a raised bike path with sidewalks on both sides while maintaining the 5 lanes of traffic that you see there. During the design phase, the design changed slightly for drainage reasons so that the end result looks a little slightly different from the preliminary design. But what I'd like you to notice, and I do apologize for the messy photo here, but what I would like you to notice is that the same accommodations were still made in the final design, right? The pedestrian accommodations made in that area there in blue on the sidewalk. Bike lanes were still added in that area there in green. As a matter of fact, there was a separation safety buffer with ballards added with that area there highlighted in red. So it may look aesthetically a little different, But the same accommodations for bike, peds, and motorists were all made with the safest kind of practical manner, which is really the goal of Complete Streets. So that's a little bit about Complete Streets policy here at GDOT. I appreciate your attention. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have on it.
Thank you, Christopher, for that. Any questions? Sharon?
Yeah, this is an interesting thing, and when I drive around out in the country, a lot of times I see people walking to and from whatever, and they're walking in the grass, and I think, God, I'm going to be covered in chiggers or whatever. But when we do these, because you said some of these are in rural areas, right? Do we paint the little bicycle on the ground and walking men on the ground? Seen those in other states, and I've seen them in more urban areas, so that people know they've got a path.
Yeah. So you asked if we paint bicycles on the ground?
Well, there's a little symbol for bicycle.
Yeah. So we have a marking that we typically use called sharrows. Now, those are going to be in the lane for bicycles, and they're going to be on facilities that are lower speed, generally 35 miles an hour or less. So yes, we do that. In urban areas, you will commonly see something like the striping on the side, maybe even a painted green area that designates a bike area as well. So depending on the context, it may or may not be there. Now, so I mentioned that we did come up in our rural areas with a revised, wider shoulder that we call bikeable shoulder, right? So there's enough pavement there that bikes can actually be accommodated on the. Now, we don't put a symbol or a marking on those types of facilities, but depending on the facility, we will put something.
Ms. Key?
Christopher, great presentation. As you can imagine, in the 5th Congressional, we have a lot of this discussion around the complete streets. Are you available for us to do some sort of consolidated presentation? They need to hear this, because I get a lot of questions about the pedestrian, a lot of complete streets. I get lots of questions. So I think it would behoove us to have one whole presentation where you kind of present this so everybody has a real clear understanding.
I'm certainly open to do that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? I have a quick question. This is one I think I know the answer to, but I may not. It relates to biking and bicyclists. What generally, with respect to the bipartisan infrastructure bill or without that bill, what should be the general behavior or requirements when motorists and bicyclists come close together or maybe conflict with one another? What's supposed to happen generally in a situation like that?
Well, it depends on what the conflict is exactly. Motorists have to recognize that bicyclists have a right to be on the road if they're in the right area, right? And bicyclists have other responsibilities too. And it kind of depends on what the situation is, what the conflict is, on how folks should navigate that area. One of the reasons that Complete Streets is important is to try to give every user kind of their own space, right? So less of those conflicts are there.
Okay. Is that it? Well, that concludes the meeting. Thank you so much. Very well done. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this time, I will call the Committee of the Whole to order. And today we've got someone who's driven a couple of miles up from South Georgia, Mr. Scott Chambers, who is our District 4 engineer, for our update.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Commissioner, and other distinguished guests here. My name is Scott Chambers. I am the district engineer for District 4 down in the southwest portion of the state, and I am here to present an update on District 4's accomplishments the past fiscal year and a look ahead into what we will be doing this fiscal year and into the future. Like I said, in District 4, we achieved a lot of great successes this past fiscal year, but it all starts with our people, and great employees produce great results. As you all know, District 4 is located in the southwest portion of the state. We have 31 counties in our district. over 3,600 state route miles, 2,600 bridges, and 23 airports. We are served by board members primarily Johnny Floyd and Tim Golden, but we are also proud to have Ms. Purcell and Mr. Morris representing portions of our district as well. It all starts with our employees in District 4, but in order for us to accomplish the mission of the department in our district, we've got to have a great support staff operating behind the scenes. And in District 4, we have that in our district administrative office. Last year, our human resources office worked very hard to ensure that we had the employees that we needed to perform our jobs. Currently, at the end of the year, we are about 86% staffed, which is about 411 employees out of 479 authorized positions. We onboarded 72 employees last year, and our HR team filled 100 vacancies and processed 667 personnel transactions. And unfortunately, we separated 64 employees, but I will say this is a net +8 gain on staffing in our district. So we were very pleased to report that for FY22. Also behind the scenes, providing us the tools and resources we need to do our jobs is our procurement and accounting office in our admin unit. Last year, we processed over 1,800 purchase orders with a dollar amount of $11.5 million. Our ladies were very busy in the procurement section in District 4. On the pre-construction side, we had a lot of notable successes, none of which we're more proud of than the Wiggum Dairy Road project. This is a project in Bainbridge, Georgia, where we're removing 4 legs of 3 state routes that run north and south in downtown Bainbridge and adding a section of new state route that will be State Route 97 and State Route 309. This project will reduce congestion and reduce truck traffic in downtown Bainbridge. Our pre-construction division not only held the PFPR for this project, they approved the right-of-way plans. They got the right-of-way authorized in a very short time frame, and right-of-way negotiations are currently underway. Our pre-construction division also consists of our design team. Granted, we started this year understaffed in our design office, but they were able to work on 12 design projects. We let 6 in-house design projects, worked on 3 maintenance requests, and conducted 12 on-site bridge inspections and 29 drainage reviews for access permits. Our survey office also was operating not fully staffed last year, but they were able to work on 29 roadway projects and 10 other miscellaneous projects. The pre-construction division has been very busy over the past fiscal year. Our right-of-way team in District 4 was able to certify the right-of-way for 5 projects. And one thing that we are most proud of is we were 100% on right-of-way certified on time for the baseline schedule for FY22. We feel like this is a monumental accomplishment for our right-of-way office. They currently have 166 active parcels under negotiation. Our utilities and operations side were also very busy. Last fiscal year, we issued 891 utility permits, 18 traffic signal permits, and 22 access permits. Also, as part of our traffic operations office, we led 8 quick response projects. These are operational improvements that help efficiency, traffic flow, and safety features along our sections of the state route system. We led 8 projects for a total of $741,000. And here are some examples of the types of projects we were able to put out and get completed last year. This first picture is an R-cut that we installed on State Route 125 in Lowndes County. It improved the operational flow of this intersection and reduced crashes at the intersection. This is a rectangular rapid flashing beacon project that we installed on State Route 31, also in Lowndes County. This enhanced pedestrian safety at this intersection for pedestrians trying to cross this multi-lane state route. We installed ground-mounted flashers at an intersection in Brooks County at the intersection of State Route 122 and State Route 333. We had been receiving some reports since we installed these that the number of crashes have gone down at this intersection. So this is also a safety feature and reduces crash frequency. And this is a intersection reconfigure job on State Route 35 Business in Colquitt County. We installed a dedicated left turn lane and improved the through traffic flow at this intersection and reduced the number of crashes at this intersection. District 4's construction section is busy building tomorrow's transportation. Last fiscal year, we had over $346 million under contract in District 4. We opened 13 projects to traffic with a combined contract amount of over $38 million. I'd like to point out some of the notable projects in District 4 that we worked on last year. This is an interchange reconstruction project in Lowndes County at Exit 2 on I-75. This is a traditional diamond interchange project prior to construction, and this is a during construction project where we're installing 2 roundabouts at the ramp intersections. You may not be able to tell from this photo here, but even though this is in a rural section of the district and on the interstate, there are 3 very large truck stops located at this interchange, and so keeping the the high volume of truck traffic flowing is vital to this area, and it hopefully will be completed in FY23. Also under construction, we just received notice to proceed on is Exit 11 is an interchange reconstruction project also in Lowndes County. As you know, District 4 is a rural district. We have a lot of communities that are separated by waterways. We like to say that our bridge reconstruction and bridge replacement projects connect communities by bridging the gap. We currently have 18 bridge projects under construction, and this example that I'm going to show you is State Route 253 over Spring Creek in Decatur County. It connects the city of Bainbridge and Lake Seminole State Park. This is a shot before construction, during construction, and here's the completed project after completion. Also, besides the 18 bridge projects that we have under construction last year, we were also constructing 30 miles of widening and reconstruction, and they had over 155 miles of resurfacing under contract. And now this is the portion of the district that's near and dear to my heart as I came from the district maintenance office into the district engineer position. We have a saying in District 4 that our maintenance forces are always ready. Wherever or whenever, such as during the middle of the night for an emergency detour, wherever. This is us deploying to Metro Atlanta in District 6 last January for snow and ice detail, or whatever the job may be, we're always ready, as our bridge crews here show pipe replacement and repair on State Route 90 in Atkinson County. Also, as part of our District 4 maintenance division, we are able to put out on the street about $14.5 million, which included 32 projects in invitation to bid contracts. These ITBs, as we call them, are projects that we may not have the resources, the personnel, or the time to do. These include various types of maintenance projects. This one is an example that Mr. Golden, I'm sure, is aware of. This is bridge rehabilitation and vegetation management on State Route 7 in Lowndes County, where we came in and we cleaned the bridge, resealed the joints, cleared the vegetation from up under and around the bridge. Also, as part of our ITB program, we do pavement preservation, and this allows us to extend the life of pavements and sections of roadway until those sections can be included in our state resurfacing program. This is an example of one of those on State Route 76 in Cook County, where we went in and did some microsurfacing to extend that life until it can be resurfaced at a later date. As I said, we had 17 of the 32 projects were pavement preservation projects. 11 were vegetation removal projects. We did 3 fencing projects and that 1 bridge rehabilitation project. But what we're really excited about is this year and into the future, District 4 will continue to look and move forward. And here are some of the upcoming successes that we anticipate to deliver for the department and to the motorists and taxpayers of Georgia. Our right-of-way office will have over 300 active parcels under negotiation this year, with 8 right-of-way certifications due. Our traffic operations office will continue to put out operational improvements through the quick response program, such as installing roundabouts at traditional stop control intersections. And our special outfits on the maintenance side has got an aggressive, robust plan for pavement preservation, such as this chip seal project going down here, performed by our forces. But not only will we be working with district employees, we're also going to move forward through partnerships and collaborations. We're going to be partnering with local governments, such as this project here. This is the Jerry Jones Drive project, where we're partnering with the locals. The locals purchased the right-of-way for this project. The locals contributed also to the utility relocation and are currently in constructability reviews with utilities and our construction office to figure out how we can deliver this project and bring it to fruition. We will partner with our contracting industry. This is an example of our Westover Boulevard extension that was recently led and awarded to Oxford Construction Company. This project will connect 2 city streets by installing an underpass under the Liberty Express bypass in Albany, State Route 520. You can see it also includes a roundabout for congestion management and traffic flow. And we'll also be partnering with our interagency offices within the department. We have 17 counties that are now part of the TIA program. This is a shot of State Route 32 in Coffee County under construction, the widening of that. Our other notable TIA project that's ongoing right now is US 280 in Crisp County, connecting the city of Cordele and Lake Blackshear. So as you can see, District 4 has been busy, but we are going to be even busier moving forward. District 4 is always up for the challenge, and we just want to thank the members of the board, executive leadership for all the resources and support they have provided for District 4 over the past year. And as many of you know, we were able to move into our new district office at the beginning of last year. This is an overhead view of our district office that we've been in, and we would like to extend an invitation to each of the board members and upper management to come down and see the new building at your next earliest convenience. And with that, I'd like to take any questions that you may have.
Any questions? I'll comment. I mean, just because you're in a rural district doesn't mean you sit around, do you?
No, ma'am, we do not.
You've got a lot going on, and it's very impressive. I'm very happy to know that you've got so many counties in the TIA program, because that is so meaningful for those areas as well.
Yes, ma'am.
But thank you so much. Do we have any questions, Mr. Commissioner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few comments. Scott does know how to spell forward. That was intentional. If you saw the backup, Scott, if you can back up. There you go. He's District 4.
That's
so,
right.
All right. So I just want to make sure you guys caught that, okay? The other thing I'd say is, Scott, isn't it true that you have a lot of project management help on the interchanges on I-75? Is that true? And also office reservation always for Tim Golden in your new district office?
He is
That's what I thought.
He has a permanent office We haven't put your name on the door yet, but we can.
I get equal time, don't I, Commissioner?
Madam
I would
Chair,
like to
you'll-
thank, let me just say that really Scott does a great job, that the whole district staff is outstanding, and our rural district has a lot of challenges. A lot of people don't realize that. Kevin likes to kid me about, hey, hire all the time, but, we do have one traffic like that. He wants to put in a roundabout, so we may have to add that as a quick response project.
We can do it.
But I do want to say thank you, Scott, and Scott's done a great job. He's been, since January, the district engineer, hadn't had a bad one yet, and, they do a great work for us, and I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome. I certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, and I will tell you, I don't know what you did to deserve 3 board members.
4.
4, okay, excuse me, 4. But yes, and I think they all are a little bit troublemakers in their own way. So I appreciate the work you do with them and your responsiveness to them as well. So,
Thank you. It's our pleasure.
well, thank you for being here today, even though we were a little bit tardy, but we've had a really full and fulfilling day. So, but thank you again for the job that you do, and so I appreciate it, and we all do. Any other business or comments? Okay, we are adjourned.